What if the speeding visitor slicing through our solar system wasn't simply ice and rock, but a craft powered by something like a reactor? An engineered object sent by an intelligence far beyond Earth to test how we respond. That thought used to belong to novels. Now it sits inside real data. Astronomers have been tracking 3I, Atlas, the third confirmed interstellar object we've seen, and its behavior doesn't fit any familiar catalog entry. At first it looked routine. A faint point of light appearing on survey images, an object on a hyperbolic path from the deep void. But its light curve didn't behave like a tumbling rock. Brightness rose and fell in exact, repeatable intervals. Radio telescopes registered energy bursts at the same moments. The pulses were not the hissing of chance, they returned in patterned sequences. Teams in Chile, Hawaii, and with space instruments cross-checking the measurements found the same thing. Emission sequences aligning with mathematical structures, prime counts, harmonic ratios. SETI has long argued that prime numbers make a good universal handshake. Nature doesn't randomly tick off primes. Something, or someone, seemed to be counting. Agencies issued cautious statements, but the message was unmistakable. The signals were structured and confirmed. Then, after directed radar experiments aimed at the object, the emissions shifted. Timing and frequency nudged in ways that matched the radar bursts, subtle but consistent across observers. It looked, to many, like a reply. Motion added to the mystery. Rather than behaving like a passive interstellar rock simply deflected by gravity and outgassing, 3I, Atlas displayed small coarse anomalies that didn't match simple sublimation models. Some argued for jets of vapor. Others noted the timing and magnitude of the deviations suggested controlled adjustments. If correct, that implies navigation, not random drift but intent. Speculation multiplied. Could this be an ancient instrument launched eons ago by a vanished culture, built to survive and report home? Might it belong to a broader network of waypoints that activate when they encounter evidence of life? Or was Earth merely an incidental receiver of a signal never meant for our eyes and ears? As the object approached, the transmissions gained complexity. Single pulses gave way to layered signals, overlapping bands and interference patterns that resembled engineered multiplexing, multiple streams woven into one channel. Analysts described emergent structure like musical counterpoint, harmonics and interleaving rhythms that seemed designed to carry dense information. Within those layers appeared familiar anchors, the hydrogen line, Fibonacci relationships, basic orbital proportions, as if the sender seeded universal reference points a scientifically literate species might recognize. Then the broadcasts grew more Earth-focused. What had once seemed omnidirectional began to show directional bias toward our planet. For the people decoding the waves, the experience became intimate and unnerving. Long nights poring over datasets, sudden flashes of insight followed by frustrating dead ends, and the eerie sense that the signal adapted after we made progress. Some researchers reported feeling watched. Others warned against anthropomorphizing a pattern. High-resolution images deepened the unease. The object's surface showed planar faces and ridged formations not typical of fragmented comets, and its rotation was unusually steady. Occasionally its orientation shifted in ways that suggested deliberate scanning, pointing toward planets, toward the Sun, then toward Earth. Defense and policy bodies could no longer treat it as only an astronomical curiosity. Had our radar revealed our presence? If this craft was an instrument of reconnaissance, then whoever deployed it now knew at least something about us. Public reaction fractured along lines as old as civilization itself. Wonder on one side, fear on the other, and a neurotic mixture of both in between. For millions, the idea that 3I, Atlas might be one of a scattered network of watchers transformed a scientific curiosity into a profound historical moment. No longer was humanity simply cataloging phenomena. we were, abruptly and without consent, an object of study. That reframing, from discovery to being discovered, stripped away the comfort of isolation. It invited a cascade of questions about who had placed these devices, why they had been left to drift for untold ages, and what criteria those builders used to decide which worlds merited attention. The public's reactions mapped onto deep cultural currents. Some embraced the revelation as confirmation of cosmic kinship. If someone had sent probes across the void, then the loneliness that defines so many of our myths and anxieties could at last be answered. There were celebrations in observatories and online forums, hastily organized gatherings where people watched decoded graphs like scripture. Artists and poets mined the signals for metaphors. Scientists who had spent careers searching for a sign felt vindicated in ways that textbooks could not capture. But others recoiled. Governments and military establishments, faced with a technological unknown, moved quickly behind closed doors. Conspiracy theories bloomed in the informational soil of panic and ambiguity. Calls for secrecy competed with demands for transparency. Should the public be told everything, or could disclosure itself be dangerous? If a probe represented reconnaissance, then by informing the world we might inadvertently broadcast our own capabilities and vulnerabilities to whomever, whatever, was listening. Some argued that silence might be safer. Others said withholding the truth would be a betrayal of democratic principles and scientific openness. Religious institutions and philosophies wrestled with implications that cut across doctrines. For some faith traditions this felt like a theological challenge. Were we still central to a cosmic narrative, or were we one localized episode in a broader theater of intelligence? Clergy and thinkers framed pastoral responses and ethical guidelines, urging calm, compassion, and humility. Skeptics cautioned against rushing to metaphysical conclusions, reminding us that meaning-making is a human reflex, both a strength and a hazard, when faced with ambiguous signals. Amid the political and cultural tumult, the work of decoding continued, patient, rigorous, and often frustrating. Teams of mathematicians, linguists, radio engineers, and anthropologists collaborated in new, uneasy alliances. The signal's layers were dense. Nested sequences, shifted harmonics, and cross-frequency modulations that resisted easy translation. Each tentative breakthrough led to more questions than answers, and the signals themselves seemed to complicate responses as if they were testing not only our ability to read them but to think together coherently. That pattern, the sense that the transmissions adapted or reacted, fed darker speculations. If the object were responsive, then interactions could reveal capabilities we preferred to keep private. The reach of our radar, the sophistication of our decryptions, the very fact that we had banded together globally to answer. To policymakers, the question of whether to respond publicly or to limit replies to tightly controlled diplomatic channels became urgent. To engineers it posed a technical problem with moral weight. How do you design a message to a stranger that does not reveal more about you than you intend? To ethicists it raised a deeper question. Do we, as a species, have the right to speak for all of humanity in answering a possible intelligence? And then there were the smaller, human-scale consequences. Sleep-deprived researchers reported dreams that replayed signal patterns. Family gatherings turned awkward when the only topic that seemed to matter was whether humanity should allow itself to be catalogued. Markets reacted in fits and starts as sectors oriented around defense and communications surged while tourism and frivolous industries watched nervously. Educational institutions suddenly found unprecedented interest in astronomy and signal processing. Classrooms filled with students eager to help decode whatever message lay within the pulsing data. Beyond politics and sociology, the presence of a potential sentinel forced a philosophical reckoning. The idea of being watched reframed familiar ethical dilemmas. If a civilization had instruments cataloging emergent intelligences, what did that say about responsibilities across time and space? Was the probe a neutral recorder, preserving a fossilized snapshot of life for distant heirs? Or was it an active agent, designed to intervene, nudge, or even test? Each hypothesis carried different moral and practical prescriptions for how we should respond. Through this maelstrom, the transmissions themselves remained steady, methodical, relentless, indifferent to human drama. There was a terrible clarity to that indifference. The pulses did not plead, they did not warn. They existed on their own terms, a rhythm that carried evidence of purpose without offering comfort. And with each measured beat came the same unavoidable truth. The silence of the cosmos, that old assumption that allowed us to hide and to hope without scrutiny, had been broken. Once a civilization is noticed, regardless of the observer's intent, anonymity evaporates. The universe, it seems, has rules we are only beginning to recognize, and those rules demand that we confront not just technical problems of signal and motion but ethical ones about who we are and how we will act when someone else is watching. That realization does not come with answers. It brings a responsibility. To respond with wisdom rather than fear, with curiosity rather than hubris, and with a collective voice that honors the diversity of human perspectives. The moment 3I, Atlas crossed our skies, we were offered a mirror and a decision. How we choose to look into it may define the next chapter of our species.